Hello and welcome to In Conversation with WLV Doctoral College. As you can see today, I'm not with Ben, I'm actually here with Dr. Martin Khechara. Martin, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the job that you do at the university?
Yeah, hello, I'm Martin Khechara, and at the university I've got a number of different hats. I'm a senior lecturer in microbiology, working in the Department of Biomedical Science and Physiology. So I educate, if you like, the next generation of scientists in the NHS as part of my academic duties. But I'm also an associate professor for engagement in STEM, in teaching and learning. And one of my roles under that umbrella, if you like, is to promote teaching and learning activity in our faculty, support people who want to do teaching and learning projects, be part of like university committees about teaching and learning. Also, I run the teaching and learning committee for our faculty. And but what I also do, I look at as engagement as a whole, and I manage the university's STEM response team, which is the Faculty of Science and Engineering's outreach team, which is a community-focused engagement team that goes out into the community, into spaces and places, into schools all over the country, to basically raise aspirations and cultural capital in places that might be more underserved than some other places, and show people that destinations into higher education isn't just for clever folk, or, you know, if you perceive yourself as somebody who might never enter university, the opportunities are there at the University of Wolverhampton. So I really have a very sort of forward-facing role for the faculty and the university, and as part of that, of course, I work with the media, broadcast media, radio, things like that occasionally, just to promote the activities of the faculty and the university as a whole for the University of Opportunity.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Martin. So today we're going to be talking about careers and getting advice from people who have a career in higher education. So Martin, can you tell us a little bit about your journey from PhD to the job that you have now?
Well, it's a bit of a convoluted, it's quite a long story. I apologise, Deborah, and everybody who's watching this, but I'll try and make it as succinct as I possibly can. So I actually did my doctoral studies in industry. So I was a defence scientist working for the Ministry of Defence when I did my PhD, and I actually did it while I was working. Mm-hmm. So we had some funding on a project, and basically somebody came up to me one day, it was in October 2000, came up to me and said, you know, in a really backhanded way, and I never really considered it. I'm one of these sort of people that don't really think things through properly a lot of the time, as many people know. And so came up to me, bit of a water cooler moment, and said, "Martin, do you fancy doing a PhD?" And I was like, "All right then." And so there I was, and I actually did my PhD with the Open University. All right, so. I didn't do it with, I wasn't partnered with physical university, and I know that of course they have a physical presence, OU, but back in the day when I did mine, it was the done thing to do in the company that I worked for. And so took up my PhD, and then by 2004 I was a doctor, which was fab. And so then I undertook a number of postgraduate positions, a couple of year-long postgrads. One of the things for the company that I work for is there was this keyword, it was called deployability, and it's something that everybody should consider in their career, is that you've got to have a lot of strings to your bow, all right? So you've got to be able to move around and all that sort of stuff. So I started out life as a molecular bacteriologist, specialising in the development of in vitro models of infection for diseases. So, you know, using cells instead of animals, that sort of thing. And but also I learned how to do protein science, protein chemistry. I could work mass specs, you know, I could work all kinds of paraphernalia that a scientist needed to do, because if I needed to achieve a particular thing in my work, then every scientist was trained in everything. So there wasn't a specific role that you did for my company. Everybody knew how to do everything. So everybody could do histology, everybody could do, you know, look at cell science, everybody could do proteins, everybody could work with all kinds of technology. And but that was a peculiarity of the place where I worked. So I did some postdocing, like everybody should, and be prepared to travel. Okay, you know, don't just stay in your hometown, go and broaden your horizons. And so I did 2 years worth of postdoc work, 12-month projects, and then I decided to have a break. I thought a career break would be just about right for me because, of course, the stresses and strains of doing doctoral studies, as we all know, those people out there who are in the middle. And if anybody's in the last 6 months, right, you know exactly what I'm saying right now, right, because it gets a bit traumatic towards the end. And it does, right? Everybody knows this, and or at least everybody should know when they start, right? And so I think so I decided to have a break, and I went travelling in an ambulance all over Europe, and managed a yoga retreat in the mountains in Spain, became a head groundsman at a stately home, learned how to be a tree surgeon, learned how to make green wood chairs, became a green woodworker, became a coppice worker, learned how to dry stone wall, and did lots of things that completely weren't science but were at the same time. And what I did was, one of the greatest things that we forget about when we're a researcher is the fact that creativity is key. And if you just come at it from a very sort of sterile way, you know, and it's very process driven, what you're doing is you forget about the fantastic nature of creativity. And by doing creative roles in what I was doing, actually it made me a much better scientist. So what I did was then I did that for a couple of years and then came back into industry, worked in industry again for another year. And as part of that role, what I was doing was I was teaching senior military officers at the time, because I went back to working for the MOD for a bit. And so I was teaching military officers, got a bit of a feel for teaching, really thought, well, hang on, this is really good here. I'm really enjoying this. You know, I seem to have a bit of a flair for engaging a class, you know, and all that sort of stuff. And I'm always well known for doing good presentations and things like that at work. And so then a job came up at the University of Wolverhampton as a lecturer, as like a junior lecturer, if you like, right at the bottom of the rung. And that was in 2008. And so I decided that I think I'd make the jump into academia from pure science. And I've never looked back since. I've been here 14 years. And so I've progressed all the way from the bottom, like working in the post room almost, through lectureship, through senior lectureship, and now into associate professorship, which of course, for those people who don't know who are watching, is a bit like a reader in research. And yeah, that's been my route into where I am now. And of course, along that way, I've developed different specialisms. So really, my job is as a communicator of science and to raise aspirations and all that sort of stuff, both in my students, in my staff, but also in my community, because the university's got a key role in its community, which I hold very dear. So I've created that specialism in my role, which is now why I manage my own department, which does that. And hopefully one day we will be university wide. That's the plan. So yeah, that's how I got to where I got to, through you know, proper science, then into yoga, and then into green woodwork, and then back into science and into teaching. So it's quite a convoluted route. But that creativity part, that break, was essential, actually, absolutely essential, because it taught me that creativity was key, actually, in my subject, even if it is laboratory-based science, because you can't see the answers without making the leaps, you know, and the creativity helps you to do that. So yeah, that's my story.
I didn't realise that you'd taken a break, so I'm going to ask a question about that. Yeah. Often people are scared about taking breaks and then coming back into either science or into education, because they're scared of that how the, you know, science has moved on or how the field has moved on, and they're going to be behind. So how did you manage that move back into science? Was it scary? Had it moved on? How did you catch up?
Yeah, it sort of had moved on. I mean, obviously organisations change and they move on. So if you go from, I went back to working in a very circuitous route, really, back to where I was working and in the same group and everything. So actually it was, things have moved on, people's lives move on. The difficult part wasn't picking up the science again, because it's easy to relearn. You know, every time we take on a new role in a scientific post, you have to learn, relearn. So you have to say, when you start a new postdoc, you have to learn everything about that, and you have that period of learning that we all go through when we start a new project. You know, those first couple of months where you're just reading all the time and you're fed up of looking at journals. You know, we've all been there as researchers. And but the thing is, it's the people. It's not about the particularly if you go back to somewhere where you've been before. It's not the subject area. It's the people that have moved on, and that's the weird part. Is the fact that like people's lives have changed. You might have been best mates, but now they've moved on. They're doing something different. People might not be in the department. The whole ethos of the facility where you work or the place where you work might have changed. You know, there might be new corporate standards and all that sort of stuff. And whereas you thought it was great when you went, you know, you had this pink mist around. You know, oh, it's so good there. You come back and actually you think it's a bit rubbish now. You know? So that's the issue, and you need to be prepared to take a pay cut. I think because you need to go in at the bottom again, right? You need to not think big because actually you've been out of work for a couple of years or a year or whatever, and things do move on so fast that your credentials get rusty.
Yeah.
So that's an important thing, you know, that you've got to take it on the chin a little bit. You know, be confident that you'll get back to where you were, but actually you might need to throttle back your expectations a little bit and manage your own expectations. I think that's the important thing.
Thank you. So is there anything that you'd have wished you'd known right at the beginning of your career that would have helped you along the way?
A couple of things. In my career when I started my PhD, the one thing I would have liked to have known is the fact that it's a bit like taking holy orders, right? Yeah. Right. You've got to completely marry your subject, right? You know, like how, you know, when somebody's ordained, they're married to the church almost, you know, because it's a massive undertaking, and to be able to say, well, actually, you need to give everything to this and forget everything else. In reality, that's what it's like. You know, you need to live it and breathe it to be successful in doctoral sort of studies and PhD stuff. And so I'd like to have known that, because you sort of creeps up on you, you know, and you suddenly realise, oh God, my whole life is this thing. So I'd like to have known that. I think I'd like to have thought more about the fact that I'm somebody who does a lot of different things, so I've got a lot of strings to my bow. So I've always got something to fall back on. But I think to have known that you become very specialised in your career as you move through your career. You know, doors close to you, right? So you need to, if somebody had said to me, you need to keep your options open by doing a lot of different things, which is where the postdocs come in, I think. Yeah. And do a lot of different things, you know, that you know, there might be tenuous links to your subject area, but actually to really go for the things that will really benefit you and be very strategic about that actual travel and learning. Yeah. I think if somebody had told me that would have been really good. I think if somebody had told me what it's like marking paperwork, I'm glad it's all online now, right, for a class of 150 people, I might have thought twice about being an academic. But actually, again, if somebody had said, you know, sort of told me about how actually fulfilling it is, to see those people graduate as well. You know, I can't go to a hospital in the West Midlands without meeting somebody I've taught. You know, you know, that feeling is real nice actually, and you don't really think about the benefits to you as a person either. And I think, you know, if somebody had sat down to me and said, you do realise what it's going to be like working at a university, don't you? You know, because it can be a highly pressurised environment. And I think it would have been nice to somebody had sat down and managed my expectations a little bit, so I knew what was coming, and that would have been fab, right?
Thank you. So my last question is, do you have any tips for postgraduate researchers or early career researchers about their careers?
I think the first thing I would the first thing I would say is that it's very easy to become siloed, right? It's very easy to become so short-sighted that you can't see how your subject area can be and must be multidisciplinary. the greatest discoveries in everything come from with different minds working together, and collaboration is key, right? I think it's very easy to get into a mindset where somebody described it to me, and there's that saying, isn't there? You've got to keep your powder dry, right? Where you become so secretive because you don't want anybody to pinch your ideas. Well, sometimes it's like that, but the majority of the time it isn't. And work in academia is about working in teams. It's about collaboration. Collaborative activity is by far the most rewarding and the most efficient way of working, right? So I think one thing I would say is work with as many different people in as many different subject areas as you can, all right? Particularly in the arts. So I work a lot with the School of Performing Arts. I work a lot with, people from FABs, from digital arts, fine arts, all sorts of things. And the cross-fertilisation of ideas that I get from working in people in those subject areas, the humanities and all that sort of stuff, even music, is key to me being able to do my job, and to realise that. Yep. I think is something that is very important. I think another really good piece of advice is when you get on a bit, right, is to really think about what benefits you. Mm-hmm. All right. It's very easy at first just to say yes to everything. Yeah. And you will very quickly become tired. So I think to sit back, consider things, think a little bit strategically. How is this? I know it sounds a bit spiteful, but for you to say, how is this going to benefit my career strategically? Where will this get me? I think is something you've got to do, because if you're a career-minded person, right, and and you're like me, just can't sit still, and you want to do things, then actually you've got to think about that properly. Because you can't do everything, as I'm finding out now. Actually, you can't do everything, and I think particularly with your postdocs, if you're just finishing up and you start to think about other opportunities, think about where those things can take you. Who are you going to meet there? How is that going to benefit you? What networks can you build from there? And really take those opportunities and make them what you can of them. Take every opportunity to network. That's really important. If you can go to conferences, please do. But don't forget about the informal nature of things as well. Some of the best deals that I've ever made aren't made at a conference or in a classroom. They're made in a social context, and after the conference, or before the conference. So I think it's important. It's important. And I know this is like counterintuitive, but it's important to think big, right, and think of your opportunities. But it's important to also have a focus. You need to know where you want to go, and because it's easy to flounder, and I suppose ultimately never think that people are going to give you opportunity, right? Because very rarely does it come on a plate, right? Yeah. People, you've got to make of it what you can, and you've got to do it, because nobody will say, we've got this fantastic opportunity and I want you to do it, right? It happens so rarely. It's like hen's teeth, it's just it doesn't exist. So it's you who's got to drive the opportunities. Right, and if you're a sort of person who finds it difficult to blow your own trumpet, then that's something that you need to start doing straight away. Yeah, that's my best advice anyway.
Thank you, Martin. And that's there's lots there that is really useful to anybody at the beginning of their career. So thanks for sharing that with us.
My pleasure.
Thank you everybody for joining us, and thanks for listening. As always, if you've got any ideas for anything that you'd like us to cover in these vlogs, please do put them in the comments below and we'll happily cover them for you. While you're there, will you have a look and make sure that you're subscribed, and also press the bell, because that will mean that you'll hear from us when we upload. We upload once a week on Fridays, and we try and make sure that we do that every week. So thanks again for listening, thanks for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.